Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. I'm Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I'm joined by my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian, and I'm confused. Am I talking to Josh or computer Josh, uploaded Josh, forever?
Who can tell the difference? Clearly, it's exactly the same, and there's no way to know whether it's real or not. And that is the subject.
One of the problems of this film.
Is that what you were going to say? One of the things that this film has difficulty
discerning,
conveying, discerning or whatever. Anyway, that is the subject of this film, is what I was going to say. We are talking about the films of 2014 in this season, and we are here at our flop episode to talk about Transcendence, a film about artificial intelligence, kind of, and computers taking over the world, or maybe a guy who is a computer taking over the world.
What was that? Is it The Boy Who Was a Computer, the 60s movie or something?
The computer wore tennis shoes? Yeah, is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even going back, 11 years now, this is an interesting subject matter that's even more kind of on the surface now. But they just didn't deliver. Although, I mean, it's a flop, but they did make over $100 million with this thing, Josh.
Yeah, but they spent $150 million to make the movie. So
they made over 100.
They didn't actually make any money because it was not profitable. It was in fact, a box office failure. It did gross $103 million on its budget of $150 million. That's not good. that is in fact a bad result for this.
Thank you for your expertise in box office.
Yeah, well, you're saying it made money, but it didn't actually make money.
I said it made over $100 million at the box office. You can't
at the
deny
box
that.
office, but in terms of making a profit, that is not what happened. And it lost money for the studio anywhere between like $35 and $100 million, depending on your calculations. But I mean, yeah, the bottom line is it did poorly. It was definitely perceived as a bomb. And it was, however, anticipated highly. And I think that's another thing when we talk about flops on this show, is a lot of times what it is not just a movie that didn't make money at the box office or didn't make a profit at the box office, but a movie that people had high expectations for. The script by Jack Paglen was on the Blacklist, which is the annual list of the hottest unproduced screenplays in Hollywood in 2012. And it was the directorial debut of Wally Pfister, who was a very successful Oscar-winning cinematographer known for working with Christopher Nolan. He'd won an Oscar for Inception. And it's got a majorly stacked all-star cast here as well. You've got Johnny Depp, Rebecca Hall, Paul Bettany, Cillian Murphy, Morgan Freeman. I mean, presumably all of whom were interested, maybe largely because of Christopher Nolan, but still, this is an impressive looking film from the outside.
And it's an impressive looking film as far as the technical aspects of it. But, Pfister had worked with a lot of these actors. So I'm sure they were also interested in like, hey, yeah, Wally, we're going to work with you on your first feature. But Nolan and Emma Thomas ended up producing it, but Nolan was circling it around the same time as, Inception or Interstellar or whatever he was doing at this time. So, it's just... It just had a lot of things in place, and they did not go out of place, Josh.
I wonder if Christopher Nolan had picked this up as a directorial effort. Like, supposedly that script was on the Blacklist, but and Jack Paglen is the only credited screenwriter here, but supposedly Wally Pfister did a lot of uncredited rewriting. I don't know what it's like originally, but I wonder if Nolan had picked it up and he had done the rewriting. Maybe with his brother, how that would have turned out.
I was thinking the same thing. It would have been better, Josh. That's how it would have turned out.
But would it have been good? I mean, was there something in here that could have turned out well?
Well, I mean, if you're like, hey, we're going to do a movie and the subject matter is a man who is dying and we're going to upload his consciousness into, the internet so he can live forever and change the world. And you're like, and Christopher Nolan's writing it, I'd be like, dude, that actually sounds great. And I kind of would like that because, the last few Nolans haven't been, I haven't loved them, but I do think I'm more interested in him in this realm than in not this realm.
In the sci-fi realm
I like
versus
him
like
best as a sci-fi mystery thriller type guy.
Yeah, I think so. I feel like that's a fair assessment. And Jonathan Nolan, who of course worked with him as a co-writer on his early work, his career is all about this stuff, Person of Interest and Westworld. I mean, those are all very much dealing with the themes of this film, and probably more effectively. I gave up on both of those shows, but they
Yeah.
have their fans more than this movie does.
Yeah, I mean, we got to say, like, if Wally Pfister, it's like, if you're a film nerd and you hear like Roger Deakins, right, like one of the, if not the greatest cinematographer, right? When you hear Wally Pfister, that's basically what you're hearing. So at this point in time, he was so hot with the Nolan stuff, and like you said, Oscar winner. So you would be excited for this man to make the jump from cinematographer to director.
Right. And he basically staked his whole career on doing this. He decided he wasn't going to be a cinematographer anymore. This was going to be his thing. And it was the wrong choice. It was, but he's stuck with it. We should say this is his first and only film as a director, and no indication that there are going to be more. But certainly, you're right. There was a lot of anticipation for this film. There was again, it looked like a big deal movie that would be both successful as the box office with all these big stars and action and stuff, but also that would be intelligent and something that probably critics would respond to. And that was wrong. It was not liked by audiences in that it didn't do well at the box office. It also got a C plus cinema score, the audience polling service. And that's very bad. As I always say, that's the people who were excited to see it right when it first opened. And so they did not care for it, nor did critics. It has a 19% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It was voted the worst movie of the year in the Village Voice Critics Poll, which is an annual poll of a lot of, I don't know how many, but like I think like 100 plus critics who participate in that. So
are they all snarky?
They probably are.
Voice.
Lot of snarkiness, yeah. But it's just a poll. It's not like an article.
Do you think they would write something like Transcendence or like Transcendence? Because
I feel like they would do better than that. Probably They would come up with something better. But I did I
danced my way out of the theater before it was over because I didn't want to see it. Yeah.
No. I feel like you're doing like a Gene Shalit level.
It didn't make a transcendent in my consciousness.
Yeah. One thing though, I did, looking through reviews of this, there are a lot of this movie is about artificial intelligence, but it's also artificially intelligent, et cetera. So in fact, that's where we'll start. Critics were not fans of this film. Chris Nashawati in Entertainment Weekly said, artificial intelligence isn't just the villain in the muddled techno-thriller Transcendence. It's also an apt description of the film's script, a cockamamie mishmash of big ideas and TED conference buzzwords that sound smart but don't compute. Directed by Wally Pfister, Christopher Nolan's brilliant cinematographer dating all the way back to 2000's Memento, Transcendence at least looks as great as you'd expect. But the script by first-time screenwriter Jack Paglen is so full of half-explained cyber nonsense and wheezy, knee-jerk man versus technology cliches, it borders on the ludicrous.
Imagine that, Josh, that you get on the blacklist, it's your first script, and this is what comes out of it. Like, I mean, it was a career killer, like you said, for Pfister. I mean, if you look, it's just shocking to me how little he's done since then. And then, I mean, Paglen's, man, he had a TV show called Roadside Picnic.
That was a TV pilot. That wasn't even a TV show.
Didn't make it. And then he did this. He has a story credit for Alien Covenant. This killed careers, Josh.
It did. Somehow it did not kill the careers of any of the actors, but it did kill the careers of those two filmmakers. And I was thinking this, I would have to do some more research on this, but I feel like it's been far more common to read about or hear about a movie that is bad, that is like, this script was on the blacklist and look what happened to it, versus a movie that came from a blacklist script that turned out to be great.
I think, in that regard, like if it's on there, right, it's got to be, there has to be a reason for it. So we know Pfister did 8 uncredited rewrites. So like, where does the responsibility lie with this one?
And that's just why I was asking you about how do you think it would have turned out with Nolan? Because the question is, was it bad and Pfister made it worse? Or was it somehow good to begin with and he ruined it?
Well, how would it be on the blacklist if it's bad?
I haven't read this script, obviously, in any form, nor have I read any scripts on the blacklist. But I feel like, again, just from reading about various movies that come from there, like, and even sometimes reading about, here's what the blacklist is this year, and like log lines from the scripts, they sound like they're all just like high concept garbage.
I wonder, though, if it's because these are all unproduced that, like, you go to a guy and you're like, hey, Jack Paglen, you wrote this script, Jack Paglen. Guess what? Wally Pfister and Christopher Nolan are circling it. They're going to do some adjustments. And he's like, well, cool. That means I don't have to work at Jamba Juice anymore. So let them do their adjustments. And, I'm siding with the writer, obviously, as a writer who's had my work butchered before, Josh, by tech billionaires. So I can relate to this whole thing.
Right. And like I said, I feel like that's what we don't really know. Like, was it better to begin with or not? I just think the blacklist in general seems to pick a lot of scripts that are like conceptually bold, but maybe don't actually execute very well, or at least they don't by the time they make it to the screen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair, but I do like the idea that it's, kind of they're taking chances. I mean, I'm just looking up, Josh, Argo, American Hustle, Juno, King's Speech, Slumdog Millionaire, Spotlight, Promising Young Woman, Hell or High Water. Those are all on the blacklist, man.
Right. No, and I think that's what I was saying is that, like, I would have to do more. I didn't look into this. I just feel like there are equally, if not more, movies from the blacklist that turned out very poorly. And maybe that's just how it is with scripts in general, but it makes me think that being on the blacklist is no indicator of anything any more than just the script was written.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm looking and it's like Margaret's there, and then right underneath it is Meet Dave.
Right, exactly. And Meet Dave is bad, but it's very high concept. It's something that you'd be like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that, but maybe no one should have thought of it.
Yeah, I do wonder now, especially because like the blacklist is also like a service now,
Yeah, and and they've expanded to all different kinds of lists. And I was just reading about the submissions for one of their other lists recently, like trying to get writers to submit to it.
This is depressing though. I'm looking at 2005, and it's like 37 out of 84 blacklist movies have been made. 2021, 6 out of 73. 2024, 0 out of 83.
Well, you notice they've also expanded the list in addition to the screenplays not being produced. So, I feel like this is a whole topic that we could do a very long, in-depth examination of. And maybe there is a podcast about blacklist movies, but that's not what we're doing here. So, getting back to Transcendence, again, not a great response from the old critics here. Ty Burr in the Boston Globe said, "How can you tell a movie is the directorial debut of a renowned cinematographer when everything's interesting to look at except the performances? Pfister keeps all the parts moving, and he's terrific with surfaces. It's everything under the surfaces that eludes him. The more ambitious, ambiguous themes a less hectic script and richer performances might illuminate. Transcendence is torn between giving its characters conflicting motives and reducing them to white hats and black hats, and it's Rebecca Hall who suffers most. Johnny Depp gives 90% of his performance from a chair. We see Techno Will only on various screens, and he looks about as bored as he probably was. The talented Hall just goes through the motions with a mopey, vaguely distressed look on her face."
So there is a blacklist podcast called the Blacklist Podcast.
That sounds about right.
With
Well, I'm sure they have a greater knowledge of this than we do.
Yes, considering it's hosted by Franklin Leonard, who created The Blacklist.
Oh, well, that's not really what we're talking about.
Right.
Then.
But he
I
just
mean,
goes
like,
over movies that have been made from The Blacklist.
yeah,
So.
I feel like, someone who would take a critical eye to these and analyze how they turned out from such a promising beginning would be interesting.
Yeah, you should do it.
Okay, I'll get on that.
I was so confused by the Johnny Depp thing because, again, it's like how much of it is him, how much of it is like on the page. I'm like, what is this character? Like, once he goes into like cyber Depp, it's like he's not menacing, he's not charismatic, he's just kind of there. And I'm like, what is this? Like, I'm really confused by this, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, yes, I'm sure a lot of that is that there's just not much for him to work with, but it's not like he's trying at all here. He's giving a very bored performance. And I think you're right that once he becomes, the cyber version of him, either he should sound menacing or he should sound sort of like grandiose and manic or whatever. And he just, hey, I've made a breakthrough. We've revolutionized humanity and you need to take a look at it. And and he's sitting there. I love too that they're like, okay, he's now in the cyber world and he could look however we can imagine. We're gonna put him in a blue button down shirt. Like maybe he's going to a meeting. He's going to a conference room.
It's still him, right? So, by the way, I'm a huge fan of when you do impressions.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. My impression of complete affectless behavior. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are issues all the way throughout. I'm not sure, how much of it is that. I mean, I'm thinking about it in my mind and I'm like, Paul Bettany was good. He did a good job. So I'll give Paul Bettany.
I feel like everyone here is also just miscast, even if they're good in general. Like they just seem wrong for what they're asked to be doing here. And, Paul Bettany, well, as we maybe talk about later or whatever, he himself has played an artificial intelligence with much more gusto than Johnny Depp brings to this part.
So who would you have cast?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think maybe the whole thing is a boondoggle to begin with, but it just doesn't seem like these actors are right for their parts.
I just think, again, going back to what we were talking about, if there's all these problems with us understanding the story and like this, what's going on, who's good, who's bad, and there's no emotion, I think this, maybe this is why Pfister, I mean, like I said, he's in Hollywood jail right now, not like Diddy. But I mean, it's just like maybe he shouldn't have been writing it. At the same time, if Chris Nolan and Emma Thomas are producing it, how did this get to the point where they're like, yep, green light this bad boy right now?
I mean, you wonder, like, they are credited, but the question is, how involved were they? Or was it just like, hey, we'll lend our names to this to help our friend, get his movie made or something? And were they actually there on a day-to-day basis or giving notes on the script or whatever? We don't really know.
Yeah. But this is a theme that's going to be at least in one more episode this season of script to page, I think.
Yeah, I mean that
script
happens.
To screen. Because script to page is the same thing.
I think, yeah, that's just when you turn the page from one to another one.
Yeah.
So Manohla Dargis in the New York Times actually had some nice things to say.
Why?
She said, Johnny Depp, who's built a brilliant career despite many of his lamentable film choices, may not be the first actor you think of to play a genius, much less humanity's destroyer or savior. But he's weirdly perfect in Transcendence, an inelegant, no doubt implausible, or maybe not, science fiction film about a futurist whose consciousness is uploaded onto the internet. Directed by Wally Pfister, a cinematographer making his feature directing debut, Transcendence is a dark, lurchingly entertaining pastiche of age-old worries, future shock jolts, hot-button topics, and old-fashioned genre thrills. However predictable and ridiculous, the film raises the question of what, as the machines rise, makes us human, and why, which certainly gives you more to chew on at the multiplex than is customary these days.
So I'm going to spoil it at the end right now, guys. So
yeah, it's not good. You can go ahead and say whatever you like.
So the real, the mystery, or one of them is like, is cyber Depp real Depp, or is it encoded with different things, and is it this same person? And then in the end, it's like I'll do an impression of Josh doing it. Like, yeah, it was always me. I told you it was me the whole time. But it's like there was nothing that would have led us to believe one way or the other that it was not or that it was. Like it was just so mishmashy the whole time.
Yeah, and that moment is played with like, I mean, Depp underplays it as he does everything here in this film, but the movie has like, you know, swelling music, and Rebecca Hall is all emotional, and it's played like this is a big reveal to us, the audience, that in fact it was really him. And as you say, it's like, I have no reason to believe that. Why is this now when he's just like, oh yeah, it's me? Like he's been saying that the whole time. Like why is this now the moment when I meant to believe it?
As long as we get more impressions of you from this.
This is an easy impression to do because it's just to like have no enthusiasm for anything, and you know I'm good at that.
Yeah, so that's like 80% of your life, 85 maybe.
Thank you. So sadly, I had seen this movie before in the theater. I reviewed it not favorably in Las Vegas Weekly at the time it came out, and I had no reason to want to see it again, but here we are, and I did in fact watch it again. But Jason, you had not seen this before.
I was really excited because I thought we were watching Danny Boyle's Trance.
As we mentioned, I think at the end of the last episode, Jason, who came up with the initial list of options for this season, bolded this movie as a possibility.
Yeah,
did not know what it was.
Really, had it been Danny Boyle, I was like, cool, this is exciting. We got to cover a Danny Boyle movie, and I'd never seen this one. And I was really pumped about it. But I really, in the same way that you made a mistake in our draft by not blocking Dave from Bad Boys 2, I made a mistake by picking this.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Dave and I did know what it was. And I think it's a perfectly legit choice to talk about as a flop. And there's a lot, you know, in terms of the Blacklist and Wally Pfister's career and Johnny Depp, there's a lot going on here. But Danny Boyle probably also would have done a more interesting job with this film as a director.
I mean, in the defense of this film, I think you could say that about 95% of the movies out there, Danny Boyle would have made a more interesting version of it. So, but yeah, no, I mean, look, I of course, like our flop episodes often involve movies that are flops because they're not good, and this is one of them.
That it is. But Dave, you were the one, I think, when we were going back and forth. And I think maybe the other options in this category were even less interesting. But you said, I've always wanted to watch this movie. Why? Yes. What was wrong with you?
Yeah, there's not a haunted house. There's not a comedy duo. I don't understand. So.
I've never seen it, but I always thought it looked like one of those movies that must just be hilariously bad. And so that's why I was really looking forward to it. And unfortunately, it's just really, really boring.
Yeah, there's nothing hilarious. There's one moment that maybe I'll bring up later that made me laugh in its badness. But
yeah,
overall, no, this movie is just, I feel like, again, this movie, you're watching all these famous people who look like they don't know why are they there? What are they supposed to do? How did they end up in this movie? And they just all seem lost. And that's kind of the sad thing
about it. I also don't know what to do.
Yeah, you didn't know. What is this movie? Where's Rosario Dawson?
Exactly. Which I ask every day of my life, no matter what's going on.
And that's a reasonable question to ask. Yeah. So anything else you want to say about the background of this film, Jason?
Josh, what are we doing here?
That is the large existential question raised by this brilliant film. What are we doing here?
Josh, have you ever watched the season 12, episode 2 Amazing Stories episode that it also involves this type of subject matter?
I have not, nor have I seen the Computer Wore Tennis Shoes, but I have seen The Lawnmower Man, which I think is another thing that people cite as an example, which is also very bad, but has a weird cult following. I mean, and you know, this goes back like to Tron, you know,
which
things
is great.
Like that. Yeah.
Tron rules.
And all of those movies, I think, even if they're failures, I mean, The Lawnmower Man is ridiculous, but it is, I think, from what I remember, Dave, more like the entertainingly bad sort of thing that you were hoping that this would be.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Exactly. I think the best example of that is that Simpsons Treehouse of Terror, where Abe gets stuck in like the video game machine and he's still giving advice to Homer or something. That was good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's like I think is in the 6th Nightmare on Elm Street where Freddy Krueger traps one of the guys in a video game, and it's like a 8-bit Nintendo video game, and it was not a high point for that series, certainly, but it's not a common theme.
I mean, I know we're going to talk more about how bad the movie is, but it's amazing to me just what a career killer this was for an Oscar, a guy who won an Oscar 4 years before for best cinematography.
Yeah, and I mean, but again, I feel like he made this decision that he was going to be a director and not a cinematographer. And despite what happened with this film, he stuck with that decision, and that was not the best choice. But certainly, yes, it did kill his career basically as a film director. So yeah, we'll get into that. We'll talk more about our general thoughts on Transcendence when we come right back. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 2014, we are talking about the flop Transcendence, not Danny Boyle's trance. I think Jason was just trying to get me into a trance there with some sort of trinket that he was waving and back and forth.
I was trying to I'm trying to upload you onto the internet, Josh,
I don't think that's how it works. I thought you were trying to hypnotize me into a trance because you were wanting us to talk about that other movie instead.
I still got to watch it at some point in time.
But I kind of liked that movie when it came out, actually. I know it was not well regarded and it was a flop, but I remember enjoying it.
It would have been perfect if this was the year.
It was, in fact, released in a different year.
So it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But this movie, look, the positive is you do have one of the great cinematographers of film, and stuff looks really beautiful. But the issue is, I think he wrote a lot of that stuff because he knew it would look really beautiful as opposed to what makes sense for the movie.
Yeah, see, and I hear you, and I saw that in a bunch of reviews, and I don't know. Watching this movie, I wouldn't say that it was poorly shot. I mean, we should say he is not the cinematographer of this film, but I'm sure had a very strong influence on it. But I wouldn't say that. Like, what moments to you looked beautiful in this film?
I mean, I thought all the stuff with the kind of protective layers coming up from the ground and the swoopingness of this like really weird little town that they're building in whatever image they want to build in was good. Obviously, we know he can shoot battle scenes. So, I mean, sure, maybe it's not Fargo, but it's fine, Josh. I mean,
it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. But I feel like if you ask me how is the cinematography in this movie, I would say it's fine. There's nothing that stands out.
But other people said it was beautiful.
Right. And that's why I'm arguing that I don't really get that. And I mean, and I saw a bunch of citations about how, Pfister, in keeping presumably with his Christopher Nolan influence, insisted on shooting this movie on 35 millimeter. And I feel like if there's any movie you don't need to shoot on 35 millimeter, it's a movie about like the cyber future.
Yes, it is. Too bad he couldn't AI the whole movie back then.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we talked about this last year with what was it, Strange Darling, where it's like, ooh, shot entirely on film. And I'm like, cool. You mean like the basically the history of cinema? Is that what we're bragging about? Like, I'm all for shooting on film. I don't think we need to brag about that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we should say that it is rare. I mean, it's rarer now than it was in 2014 even. And so it is notable when someone like Christopher Nolan insists on shooting on film, but he doesn't, like in Strange Darling, put a giant title card at the beginning telling you that. But I mean, I will say when I watch a movie now, Materialist recently is one, and it is shot on film, and you can see that. It is like, oh, cool.
Yeah, we all love that. We would all want that. I would want to do that for my shorts, none of which are features or on the blacklist. All on the brown list, the worst for screenplays that have not been produced, though. So I'm consistent. So
that's a good one. Yeah.
Thanks, Josh.
Great list. Yeah. No, I aspire to be on that list.
Did you like anything in this movie? You're saying all the performances. Here's the thing. When I watched this is my best way of describing it. I could have left, taken a phone call, read a chapter in a book, got to the bathroom, made dinner. At any point in time, take 10 to 15-minute breaks, come back. I mean, if it was a 10-minute bathroom break, I have other issues going on that we don't need to get into, but you know what I mean. And I wouldn't have missed anything. Like, as far like it's too basic in like, you know what I mean? You could just turn away and come back whenever you want and you'd be caught up without having to worry about anything.
Yeah, at one point, the characters take a break for 2 years and nothing seems to have changed.
That was such a bummer to me in my Letterboxd review at Go for Jason. I noted that because so what happens is they upload them. All the government and I guess they're really what would they be, Josh? Mercenaries, bandits, vigilantes, I guess.
Oh yeah,
would be after them.
the vigilante group, was it Rise?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the vigilantes are the ones who are chasing them at this point in time, and they find this tiny California, really run down kind of one street western town.
I think it's in Texas.
That's okay, whatever.
Yeah.
So
they might have built it in California to shoot the movie, but I think it's supposed to be in Texas.
Sure, I'll go with that. Anyway, and then they're like, yeah, this is, and then Rebecca Hall's like, why are we here? And then Johnny Depp, Josh, what he says, because this is the perfect place to build, but I wanted you to do that line.
This is the perfect place for us to build. You will see how perfect it is. I mean, and like, you're joking, but Johnny Depp's performance is only slightly better than mine.
So anyway, so then they cut to 2 years later when they've built most of this, and I'm like, well, I thought those 2 years would have been really interesting. Like, how did they build? Why did the town folk go along with this? What conflict did they run into? How come no one was able to find them during those 2 years? That was what how did this character, who's now an AI version of himself, like, how does he evolve over those 2 years? Like, I thought there was so much meat in that section. And when they cut to 2 years later, I'm like, you just blew the movie for me.
Right. No, I agree. And first of all, I was wrong. It's Rift, not Rise, is the name of the the anti-technology terrorist group that sets this in motion because they try to assassinate Johnny Depp because he's a scientist guy.
By using the same tactic that the Russians used on a spy in 2006.
Right. They shoot him and he recovers from being shot, but then he's been poisoned with polonium, radiation poisoning, so he dies. And that's why they give him enough time that he can upload himself to the cloud or whatever, because he's going to die over the course of a month. But I mean, you are absolutely right. And the thing about that 2-year break is all of those things that you mentioned don't seem to have progressed in any way. The other thing, like little things that bug me, you're talking about a lot of big things, right? Like, how did the government not find them? How did nobody know that they were building this giant data center? Like, how did this AI consciousness evolve over 2 years? I was thinking about, what about her relationship with him? So much of this second half of the movie is about how she feels alienated from him and he doesn't feel like he's really her husband anymore. But like, were those 2 years just chill? Were they just like having dinner and talking about their day or whatever? Like, how the fuck did that even go?
And that was, again, going back to like the performance or also the writing of the main character. I'm like, well, in the end, if he says it was always him, then why would we have suspected it wasn't, based on the actions, which are different when he's in the computer as opposed to when he's a human.
Right. I mean, he doesn't ever seem human-like while he's in the computer, right?
Right,
I mean,
exactly. There was nothing that was like, oh, this is that guy.
No. I mean, and you're supposed to, in the first, when Johnny Depp is there as a physical presence, you're supposed to get, and you don't, but you're supposed to get that he and Rebecca Hall are like so in love. They have zero chemistry. But the idea that they're like these like incredibly devoted spouses, and that definitely doesn't come across once he becomes computer guy. He's like, I love you, Evelyn. You mean so much to me. And like, I didn't buy it. So
yeah, I mean, we just got done with 1941, and I'm thinking back to Suspicion, or I'm thinking back when we were covering some of the noir stuff, and I watched, In a Lonely Place, or we can go to the 70s with all those like paranoid, kind of political thrillers. There are so many instances of character work done better. And then on the flip side of that, the two movies that I think about are, you're talking about the relationship between Cyberman and his human wife, and her came out a year later, right?
It was earlier. There's a lot of references to her in reviews at the time. Yeah,
and hers amazing. And then one of my favorite movies of the last few years, when you're looking at it from the vigilante side and how amazingly they pulled it off, How to Blow Up a Pipeline. So we have all these great examples of before and after that have done well. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. Yeah. I mean, and the vigilante group is in no way convincing. And you've got Kate Mara there as the leader of the vigilante group, who seems like, she's just sort of like cosplaying terrorist or whatever. And How to Blow Up a Pipeline is a good example because you have these sort of unassuming looking younger women like leading the movement, and it's completely convincing. And people like that really are and could be, leading movements like that. But Kate Mara, again, like every actor in this movie, looks like she's like, why am I here? What's happening? Christopher Nolan, what did you do to me?
Right. So, and Dave and I both quite enjoyed Kate Mara recently in Friendship.
Oh yeah.
She's very good in it, and she's doing some weird, unique, like very emboldened stuff. Like I would say, that character of like, the downtrodden wife, she does something cool with that, right? But so then it becomes, okay, on page, it didn't really work. Structurally, obviously that goes there, but does Pfister, is he not able to work with actors? What is, if they're all not living up to their potential? How much of that goes on him?
Right. I think a lot. I mean, you can look at Johnny Depp's performance and blame it on Johnny Depp because clearly he's not trying. But the rest of these actors seem to be doing their best with this material and just can't get a handle on it. And I think when it's everyone, basically, you do have to put a lot of that blame on the director.
I also think that it feels like Johnny Depp is just simply maybe not trying, but trying to do something completely different than everybody else. And I think he's trying to do like a very stilted, old school, like B, horror movie kind of thing. And it just doesn't fit the rest of the movie. Not that anything in the movie fits itself, but, especially.
Like a Lawnmower Man?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I wish he was doing a big B, but this is more of like the stilted kind where you kind of watch these like much, much, much older, forgotten horror movies. It feels like that's the kind of thing he's trying to do.
Yeah, like a 50s horror, like B movie. But I mean, I think also, Dave, like you're saying, he's doing this in contrast to everyone else in the movie. And I wonder if he's also doing it in contrast to all of his other performances of the time period where
sure.
At this point, he'd been known as like the guy who plays big, wacky characters. And maybe he thought, oh, here, I can underplay this like hell and people will see my range, which he's wrong about, but maybe that was part of it.
I'm not going to defend this performance, but I am going to defend him, obviously, especially, before all the stuff that you're mentioning, the 90s, I like Donnie Brasco and, Benny and June, like he's got he had amazing range, right? So,
yeah, but he'd completely lost it by this point.
How does one lose all that range, Josh, in your estimation?
It happens. You look at the career arcs of talking about Donnie Brasco, look at Al Pacino's career arc,
I mean, again, we've talked a lot about Pacino on this show, but he still throws out a banger every now and again.
He does. And maybe Johnny Depp could, Johnny Depp has other issues that are preventing him perhaps from getting the opportunity to do that. Maybe he could. But I wonder if that was part of what he was thinking here. Like, hey, I can switch it up here and do something different and people will see that. And it just comes across as like he's bored. And he doesn't want to be there.
Going back to
he got $20 million to appear in this film.
And 15% of the gross. So does that mean it made even less? Does it make only $85 million because he gets the 15%?
No, well, if it's not first dollar gross, he got zero because it's taken out of the profit. There's no profit.
But they never make him pay it back when the movie doesn't do well and they get bad reviews. Like, we were going to give you 15%, but based on the reviews and how this movie's doing, you owe us $3 million. I wouldn't want that.
They should. Yeah, no. But right. I mean, I'm sure the budget it didn't help that they had to pay Johnny Depp all that money.
If we're talking about Nolan, we talked about Memento, very clear. I mean, obviously Oppenheimer might not have been my favorite. Very clear though. Inception, I love all this stuff. And this keeps going back to that, 2-year window that we talk about. And there's such a lack of clarity that could have been utilized in this film. And I'm just wondering, like, how much of that, if you don't know your imperative as an actor, like, it's hard, man,
Right. So. Some of these characters, like Morgan Freeman's character, the whole time you're like, what is his motivation? Like, why is he even here? He just kind of stands around in the background. It's like, he works for the government, but he's not a government agent. And he's friends with Johnny Depp and Rebecca Hall, but he's also like their rival. And that Morgan Freeman literally has never used a computer. And he definitely does not know what the fuck he's talking about.
Andy Dufresne came in and taught me JavaScript.
That's beautiful. That's very good.
Clifton Collins Jr. is one of the great character actors of the last 25 years. And you wouldn't even remember or forget that he was in this movie if I didn't bring that up to you.
Yeah, and he plays, I mean, he's a key part of where the movie goes from like, oh, this is a chilling examination of things that might be real to like, it's now a zombie movie maybe or something.
Well, but again, talking about movies that we've covered in the past, one of your picks, Stepford Wives, is like a perfect example of how to pull that off, right? So throughout film history, there are so many interesting technological, psychological thrillers that this one on paper sounds like it should have been, and it just wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a moment where Clifton Collins plays like a worker at their compound, and he gets injured, he gets beaten up.
He's he's like the foreman of the construction crew. He does all their building.
And he gets beaten up, not by the terrorists, but like some random local thugs who see that he has money, never appear again.
But I don't think it was because of the money. Just real fast, and this is another instance of where we could have added more conflict. Remember that happened right after people were driving down the street, throwing down the signs that said, what is Beechwood? And they're kind of explaining like, hey, you're in some type of cyber experiment type thing, right? But and maybe I see the look on your face and you're going to disagree with me, and that's fine. But I think that could have been explored and added way more conflict to this.
I agree with you on that point. I think the problem is that it's not that we see him right before he gets beat up. He's in the local diner, and for some reason
he pulls out
like a giant wad of cash to pay like $10 for his meal or whatever. And when these guys beat him up, they're like, we saw the money or something like that. Like, so just in case, like, guess what? We're not actually related to the plot. And so they beat him up.
Well, that's on me because I guess I wanted it to be that way.
No, and you should, because it would make a lot more sense. And you're right. That scene where they're throwing out the flyers, trying to like warn people about what's going on is right before that. But anyway, he's going to die. And Johnny Depp is like, I can cure him. And so they use some nano whatevers to heal him, but now he also has like a computer brain or something, and so Johnny Depp can control him. And the moment when he like Johnny Depp speaks through him is supposed to be like very chilling. He's like, Evelyn, now I can touch you. And Clifton Collins, do they use Johnny Depp's actual voice there? I think they like use
I thought they did.
But. Yeah. But anyway, I feel like that moment is supposed to be very, very disturbing. And it's just
right.
It's
like he could
silly.
mind control everything and everything.
Right.
But again,
that was the one moment where I finally was like, oh yes, this movie is about to get great. And then it just never goes anywhere from there. But I laughed really hard at that part, at least. So.
Speaking of those flyers, is it Rift? Who's throwing those flyers? And why do we never see them again?
They're definitely Rift's flyers, but yeah, there's just some random kid on a bike. The other thing that annoyed me about the 2-year break is that they go to this town initially and it's all run down and it seems like half of the people have moved away. And Johnny Depp is like, it doesn't look like much. This is the perfect place for us to build. And so they buy everything, right? And they build this fancy ass data center or whatever it is underground. And yet 2 years later, all the buildings are still run down. Barely anybody lives there. Clifton Collins seems to be the only person who has any money. Like, what, why?
I mean, that would have been another interesting thing to explore. Like, is this now a tech hub? Is this, why are they specifically keeping people out because they own everything? Like, again, we're just going over all these points of interest that were not in the film.
No. And I will mention, because we're talking about Johnny Depp getting to mind control everybody. His name, by the way, is Will Castor, and he casts his will into these other people.
I wrote that down.
Symbolism there.
My favorite thing about the movie is his name.
Yeah. It's great, really sophisticated stuff. But so in sort of like the final battle, eventually the army, or it's not the army, it's I don't even know, it's the FBI, I guess.
Government.
Cillian Murphy's.
Yeah.
And they team up with Rift, and there's a bunch of soldier guys or whatever invading the town. And so Johnny Depp takes control of all these people who've all voluntarily shown up to become like robot slaves for some reason. Yeah. And we're supposed to see how they're all like sort of, super powered in a way because they have like nanobots in them or whatever. And at one point, some random dude, he's got to climb a ladder up to the roof. Dave, the same moment. And the ladder is like right there. He just grab it. And he does this little like super jump onto the ladder. Like, what the fuck was the point of that? It looks so silly.
There's so many, like, well, not so many. That's the thing. I wish there was more, but there's like in that sequence of like, that is the only stuff in the movie where I started laughing and I was just like all into it. Give me more of the zombie
You wanted
tech
the camp.
overload. Yeah, exactly. Give me more.
Yeah. I mean, and Jason, you're talking about like Pfister knows how to stage a battle, and I would not agree with you. The action is not good in this movie.
Terrible.
All right, fine. Well, here's another thing, Josh, that we didn't, that could have been really meaty. That wasn't meaty at all, right? Beginning of this movie, you know, Will and Evelyn are best friends with Max, played by Paul Bettany, right? And Paul Bettany's character is all about how we have to, I mean, it's prevalent today, protect ourselves from technology taking over the world and everything, right? But he's best friends with them, blah, blah, blah. Then Rift kidnaps him, and it looks like they're going to kill him, but they want his help. And then 2 years later, he's basically like the co-leader of Rift. And they even ask at one point, like, how did they turn you? And it's like, I would have liked to have seen that process of like, hey, you know what? Oh, these guys are right, even though they were going to murder me type thing.
Right. I mean, and Kate Mara's character is like, is she like a mastermind of psychological manipulation? Is she just really smart? Like her whole personality is that like she has blonde dyed hair and eyeliner. That's like all they give her, you know? And you're right. That's a very key change for that character because he becomes he's like the voice of reason. He's trying to convince Evelyn, like, you have to do this, right? She has to like upload a virus so they can destroy the internet or like where it just makes no sense.
If you shut down it was basically Y2K. If you shut down everything on the internet, you can reset everything.
Yeah, but you can't reset it because they can't turn the internet back on. It's not turning it off and turning it back on. You turn it off.
And it's off forever.
And it's off forever. Although then we get this post-apocalyptic ending, and I understand that the internet had to stay off, but there's like no electricity. Like, could they not have non-internet connected electricity?
Doesn't the internet, I mean, at the end, doesn't the computer, I was reading like, you know, trivia about it. And it said in Japanese, it was saying computing on the computer, even though it was off. So was it really off? I guess we'll have to find out in Transcendence 2.
Yeah, there is a little Boogaloo tag at the end where we think maybe the nanobots in the rain have survived or whatever. So.
Nano rainbot.
Yeah. Anyway, I feel like we should rate this out of 5 zombie robot slaves.
Okay. I mean, I gave it 2.5 on Letterboxd, but it's probably 2. I'll go with 2 here today, Josh.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is 2. Even though everyone is miscast, I feel like the fact that these actors are all talented, like there's a baseline competence that you can watch this, but you shouldn't. It's bad. So 2 from me, though. Dave, how do you rate this?
I'm surprised I actually went lower than you guys. I went 1.5.
No.
Yeah, I aside from those 2 laughs, this was just an absolute bore.
It is really boring. And it's not short either. It's 2 full hours long. Yeah.
Wait till next week, boys.
Yeah. True. So we'll come back and talk about the legacy of Transcendence. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 2014, we have been talking about the flop Transcendence, and we've kind of gone into this. Wally Pfister, the director, I mean, he banked basically his whole career on this movie, and it was the wrong choice. And they killed his career, really.
I mean, I have to, you know, we kind of alluded to it. I think a lot of that is he dug in. There's no doubt Oscar-winning cinematographer Wally Pfister could be working all the time as a director of photography still.
Yeah, I mean, he has not had any credits as a cinematographer since this. He does seem to have decided he's going to be a director. And we don't know if he's been attempting to, get hired as a film director or has been developing projects that went nowhere. In terms of his actual credits, he has a handful of TV episodes, although even that was like 7 years ago or something as most recently, and basically just directs commercials.
Yeah, and TV movies and stuff like that.
So not even TV movies, I don't think. I mean, early on, I think he worked as a cinematographer, but I mean, the only directing credits he has are TV episodes.
I saw that he did the crypto only the brave commercial, which I mean, that means he didn't learn anything from this movie.
Yeah, that's true. He does seem like, I feel like this feels like a movie that is made by a filmmaker who would be into crypto.
Yeah.
Josh, you keep talking about the miscasting. Names that I saw for this were James McAvoy, Ewan McGregor, Christian Bale, Jude Law, and Tobey Maguire as the kind of two male leads, all of which sound like they would have been interesting. Numi Rapace, Kate Winslet, Emily Blunt, Rooney Mara as Evelyn. I mean, again, how much is there that they could do? And then this was my favorite one and would have definitely added to it. Christoph Waltz as anything.
As anything? Did they?
They're
I
like,
feel like
they're like, there would have been a role for Christoph Waltz, whatever, you know. And
yeah,
I'm like, yeah,
I could
we
see
could have
him
used
playing Morgan Freeman's character. That seems like the kind of the character that they would have cast him as. But yeah, I mean, I guess saying that these people are miscast, it's true that I don't know that any of those people that you named would have been like better, and maybe the characters are just miscalculated or whatever. But it just came from me thinking that like these actors don't know what kind of character they're meant to be playing.
I mean, again, that goes back to what's on page and the director's impetus. I mean, I will always say this, those middle three Star Wars movies, Phantom Menace, blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Like you have some of the best actors out there performing terribly. And if they're all performing terribly, that's a lot of that has to fall on George Lucas.
Right. Yeah. And I think so. But I do think maybe the exception is Johnny Depp, that if you got someone who was trying to do something, if you had Nicolas Cage in that in that role, at least you could have had a fun villain, which is essentially what he is. And Depp does not give you that at all.
I lost my consciousness.
Love it.
Yes.
Johnny Depp, you know, he's had some issues. He's got a Golden Globe as well as 3 Oscar noms and 2 BAFTA noms, I think. I mean, I think Donnie Brasco, I'm due for a Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas rewatch. I mean, he was the biggest movie star in the world. I love him in the Tim Burton stuff. They've collaborated a million times. So Ed Wood, Edward Scissorhands, like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think Donnie Brasco was probably the last good performance he gave. And this came right in the middle. I was thinking this was the end of his phase as like big, wacky Hollywood blockbuster guy. But it was really in the middle because there was at least one more Pirates of the Caribbean movie after this. There was Murder on the Orient Express, and then Black Mass, which was kind of his
Didn't like that one.
Later effort to be more serious. And but you know, he just seems to have gotten completely lost as an actor, where either he's doing those ridiculous over, like, you know, Jason, we were recently talking, I know you guys did a Piecing It Together episode on Dogma, and we've been talking about Kevin Smith. I mean, whatever Johnny Depp has been doing for Kevin Smith in those movies is just abominable.
I mean, that goes to the director as well, I'd say. So,
yeah. But I think Johnny Depp like co-conceived that character, and he's either doing these like insane caricatures, or he's doing like extreme underplaying, like he's doing here, and like kind of what he does in Black Mass. And so I just feel like he's completely lost whatever he had.
The 2 upcoming films that I noted, which seem to be more mainstream than, you know, kind of his time out as he was kind of canceled here. Day Drinker, an enigmatic stranger forms an unlikely bond with a grieving bartender who lost her lover. Their lives intertwine in unexpected ways. That's Mark Webb and Penelope Cruz as the co-stars, so that could be a thing. And then the one I'm really looking forward to, The Carnival at the End of Days. God, disappointed with what's gone down on planet Earth, wants to wipe out humanity, and the only one who wants to save them is Satan, who convinces God that 2 young people he's found are the new Adam and Eve. And that's directed by Terry Gilliam and also co-stars Adam Driver. So that could be awesome.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, I'm skeptical of anything with Johnny Depp. And of course, Johnny Depp was originally supposed to star in The Man Who Killed Don Quixote, the notoriously kind of cursed Terry Gilliam movie that ultimately, I think, ended up not including him. Right. But and did include Adam Driver. But yeah,
definitely watch that documentary though, Lost in La Mancha. About
that is a fascinating, yeah. And the film that Gilliam ultimately made is not great, but it is interesting, I will say. So I just, you know, even aside, and I know we don't want to get into like, you know, his very, very, very public personal issues, but even if you leave that aside, I feel like just as an actor, he's completely fizzled out. There's no mojo left there.
What about as a musician? You like the Hollywood vampires?
You know, I have to say, I don't believe I have listened to any of the music by the Hollywood Vampires. Have you? Did
No.
you stream their albums before this episode?
No, but I had heard some of the stuff he did with Jeff Beck, and that was pretty decent. So I thought that was good stuff. So and it did bring me back into the Tom Petty music videos he did back in the day, Into the Great Wide Open. That's a classic video right there.
That is a very good music video. Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to say that like all of that other stuff, the early Tim Burton stuff, or things like that you were mentioning isn't good. Like that's what's even more disappointing is because at one point he was great. And he was great at playing those weird characters like in those Tim Burton movies. But I feel like he's not only is he bad at playing like normal humans, but he's bad at playing those weirdos too.
And he's not a good tipper, I can tell you that from personal experience.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, do you have a story on that?
The story is that Johnny Depp was staying in Prim. This might have been during Fear and Loathing filming and whatnot. And maybe he took a little too many druggies, and they had to call someone to give him medical attention. And the person they called is someone I am very close to in Las Vegas. And, you know, if you're making a personal house call to someone in 45 minutes away, you're supposed to tip. And he did not tip. And I think that's a notorious fact about him.
Yeah, I could buy that. He doesn't maybe seem, you know, regardless of his legal issues, he seems like maybe not a great guy.
Maybe not. I don't know. That whole situation's nuts. My favorite, you know, I run all these trivia nights around town. I think one trivia name that still sticks with me was during the Johnny Depp trial. One of the teams, their name was "That's the Craziest Thing I Amber Heard." I thought that was a great name.
Yeah.
Dave's laughing.
I feel like
That's
your
pretty
trivia
good.
teams need to up their fun game.
Yeah, why don't you show up then, bro?
Yeah, no, I think I'm going to pass, but you have plenty of people at those. Check out Jason's Trivia Nights.
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah. No, I mean, everyone else, I feel like Rebecca Hall, I was looking like she's great. She's really, I mean, she's not a huge star, but she's pretty much always good. I mean, I was looking through her filmography and it's varied, you know, The Gift, which is a great underrated thriller, or Christine, where she stars as that troubled, the real life news anchor who committed suicide on air. That's a really, I mean, it's a hard movie to watch, but she's fantastic in it. The Night House is another really cool horror movie. Professor Marston and the Wonder Women, the biopic about the creator of Wonder Woman. I mean, really varied, and she's always great in those movies.
Leaving anything out, Josh?
I know exactly where he's going, my guy.
I mean, I don't know what exactly.
Godzilla versus Kong.
Oh, I didn't
There
even
you
remember
go.
she was
Yeah.
in those movies. But
She's a
Dave,
Kong whisperer.
Yeah, as much as you love those movies, would you say that Rebecca Hall's presence is relevant to your love of them?
Oh, yeah, she's great. She's absolutely great. I mean,
All
she
right.
is selling a very ridiculous part as a Kong whisperer. So,
All right.
come on.
I feel like your position on those movies is always get rid of the humans.
Yeah, I know, but she's one of the better ones. So
Okay.
Well, I mean, we did talk about her for a minute when we did The Town, and the upcoming film of hers I marked down is the new Ira Sachs film, Peter Huger's Day. Ira Sachs, not the easiest filmmaker to get into, but makes interesting movies.
Yeah, that movie I think has been playing festivals and has been getting good reviews. And I did want to mention also as a director, the film that she wrote and directed, Passing, is excellent as well.
Oh,
and I don't
yeah.
know if she's working she's got any projects behind the camera coming up, but I hope she does, because that was a great debut. Yeah.
So, Josh, tying stuff back into awesome movie here, Paul Bettany will be playing Salieri in the Amadeus limited series coming up.
Oh, why is everything being remade into a limited series? We probably talked about him when we did the Avengers.
Yeah,
he played a much more interesting AI character in many Marvel movies, and sadly, he reunited with Johnny Depp in Mordecai, which I sadly have seen. Paul Bettany in that film playing a character named Jock Strap.
hell yeah.
Do you like Mordecai, Dave?
I only saw it once, loved it. So
That sounds about right.
Poor Cillian Murphy. We haven't heard from him since.
Yeah, he ran back to Christopher Nolan, which was a smart move, and won an Oscar.
Won an Oscar and did 80 other Nolan movies, and now we get the Danny Boyle movies because he's coming back to the 28 years later franchise. They made two of them coming up 28 years later, and 28 years later, The Bone Temple.
Yeah, I look forward to that. Morgan Freeman, of course, a legend. I was like, oh, we talked about him once before. We have talked about him in 4 previous episodes on Unforgiven, The Shawshank Redemption, Driving Miss Daisy, and Gone Baby Gone. And we will be talking about him yet again coming up this
It's got to be, if not our most covered, one of our most covered actors. So,
he's so incredibly prolific. And the thing, he's 88 years old and he's still making multiple movies a year. And he's one of these actors who clearly doesn't say no. And he'll be in some major blockbuster or Oscar type film. And then he'll be in some crappy straight to video thriller where he sits in a room and tells the hero what to do.
He's earned it. If he wants to work, he wants to work. Of all the upcoming films that I saw that of these actors, Josh, the one I'm most excited about is Kate Mara, who will be in the new Werner Herzog film, Bucking Fastard.
Bucking Fastard,
Bucking
right?
Fastard, yeah. So Jean and Joan Holbrook are 2 sisters who are so close they speak in unison, love the same man, and have the same dreams. In search of an imaginary world where true love is possible, they start digging through an entire mountain range. Sign me up, day one, let's go.
And that, we should say, is Kate Mara and Rooney Mara, who I believe are appearing together for the first time in that.
It's going to be exciting. I saw this. There's a clip, I'll send it to you guys, about like these 2 Australian women who were like run off the road. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, I've seen that. They're very famous in Australia who speak in unison. And weirdly, that Herzog movie is based on a different real pair of twins who were like that.
Oh, that's so cool. Let's go. If nothing else, this has all been worth it for that.
Yeah. So anything else you want to say about the legacy of this movie, Jason?
Don't watch it. And fuck you, Elon Musk, who's in here as a cameo. You
that is true.
Yourself,
I wasn't sure. He shows up in the audience at the beginning of Will Castor's like presentation, and it's so brief that I was like, is that Elon Musk? Maybe it's just some guy who looks like
hey, back when we liked you and you were doing good things and not stealing from the poorest people in the world.
Yeah, every reference or appearance from Elon Musk about him being like a tech genius. I think it's in the 2009 Star Trek movie where they're like, oh, you're just like the genius inventors of the past, like Thomas Edison and Elon Musk. And it's like, that was
they're never like,
Abrams. That was the wrong call.
All he did was strong arm his the co-creators or creators of those products out of the companies.
I mean, in that case, he's actually like Thomas Edison, but they may have mentioned someone else instead. But
I don't remember Thomas Edison giving a Nazi salute at a presidential inauguration.
Probably not, but he is, I believe, someone who took credit for inventions that were actually just people who worked for him.
Leave New Jersey's Thomas Edison out of this.
All right. That's Transcendence, and that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. You can upload your consciousness to our pages online and on social media.
Beak, beak, bark, bark, 012011100. I said 2 does not compute, not part of binary code. We're at Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and the Gram. AwesomeMovieYear.com. I'm Jason Harris Comedy, or Jay Harris Comedy on all the things. As I said, go for Jason. That's a hot ticket on Letterboxd.
You can find some old things from me at joshbellhateseverything.com. I am at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, at Signal Bleed on Blue Sky, and on Letterboxd. And if you watch this movie, unfortunately for you, or any of the movies, the better movies that we talk about on the show, tag your review Awesome Movie Year on Letterboxd, and we would love to know what you think. And check out our producer, David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on social media at PiecingPod, and check me out on Letterboxd by David Rosen.
Jason, what's in our next episode?
Josh, this movie is so much longer than the one we just covered. It's a 3-hour and 16-minute Turkish film that won the Palme d'Or. It's called Winter Sleep.
So tune in next time for Winter Sleep, and thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.